Oh, hello. Welcome to the Phantasmagorium Show, where we are proud to present a movie review. And I have no way to introduce this, so we're just going to start talking about it. I am Scotty R37. I am joined by Kat, and we have seen Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. Do you want to just right off the bat, did you like it?
I did.
I did too. And I know it's a very divisive film. I know that I've seen some critics that I trust, like mainstream critics that I trust, just say it is pondering, self-indulgent, navel-gazing. And while I can understand that perspective, I felt that it was, if you try and over-intellectualize it as opposed to the broad brushes, you can miss the forest for the trees. What kind of impression did you get? Just knowing going in how it had polarized audiences.
I had a feeling that because of that divisiveness, that it's probably a lot better than a lot of the haters think it is. Because, my thesis has been that the, modern mainstream films have been dumbed down to unbearable levels for the last couple decades. And anytime a mainstream movie is remotely abstract or asks the viewer to think at all, they start losing it. I can't follow it. Like, yeah, I can see people not enjoying this movie, but I didn't have any problem understanding it. It was pretty straightforward. So, parallel for the fall of Rome, the Catilinarian conspiracy. You have, on the one hand, you have Caesar trying to build Megalopolis to think about the future for everybody rather than just the here and the now. You have Mayor Cicero, who's corrupt, who talks about like he cares about everybody, but he doesn't. You see how decadent they all live and, raising money ostensibly for charity, which they're just going to pocket themselves. And meanwhile, you have his Caesar has a jealous cousin who's trying to undermine him at every turn. And you have a TV presenter who initially tries to gain power through Caesar, but he's not interested in her. So then she pivots over to his uncle instead. And you see how those little subplots play out. But I thought those plot lines are easy to follow. I did track with the love story between Mayor Cicero's daughter and Caesar. I could see where that was going. That was pretty straightforward. And even things which I thought wouldn't come back based on how so many critics and just regular movie fans were like, they bring up so many things and they never address again, like the Caesar being acquitted of his wife's murder. It's like, no, actually that does come back later in the story. And it does feel a bit like a fable, because that's the official subtitle, Megalopolis, a fable, because things happen that are that in a normal movie would demand you address it. Like there's a scene when a bunch of people are complaining because Caesar has apparently leveled their neighborhood in the name of his Megalopolis, and you don't get any response from Caesar. It's like, wow, that seems kind of evil. Like, what's going on? But it's presented almost like it's a thing that happened, and it's kind of dreamily moves on from that, and you don't really address it again, at least not from Caesar's perspective. And in other scenes, it's been pointed out that there seem to be too few extras for like the citywide outdoor rioting scenes and things like that, where there's barely anybody shows up, and it makes it feel almost like a little tight-knit fairy tale, even though they're trying to tell this big citywide story. I was also surprised to find that there wasn't as much bad green screen or VFX as I was led to believe. Some of it was pretty good, and I liked the Lawrence Fishburne character. I didn't mind that he's like a narrator. Sometimes he narrates, sometimes he doesn't. It's kind of funny. At times it works. The one time he doesn't narrate, the title card was kind of jarring. I was expecting his voice to come on screen, and then it doesn't. It's like, okay. Performances weren't as bad as I was led to believe. It's like, yeah, Aubrey Plaza and Shia LaBeouf are dialing it up to 11, but you can tell that's deliberate for their characters, because one's a wild TV presenter and the other is the fiendish fool, the fool who's trying to undercut everybody. So that was fine. John Boyd, I could tell, was having a blast. That was great. So I didn't get what all the hate was for the movie. It's like, it's such abstract in terms of the overall, the design is so beautiful and so different that sometimes I would forgive the bad effects, because it just, what the effects themselves contain are so unique looking compared to what you see in other movies, especially in other sci-fis. I'm like, wow, this is kind of interesting. So I was engaged because I didn't know what was going to happen one scene to the next. Yeah, Adam Driver's character was kind of basic. He kind of does the same thing he's been doing in a lot of his movies, like serious type roles. But yeah, I had fun with it. I really don't get all the hate. It's like, maybe too many people are approaching it from a logical perspective, because everybody's thumbnails for these reviews are like, I don't understand it. What's going on? It's like, Well, sometimes it's like what did Christopher Nolan say about Tenet? You have to feel it, don't so much think about it. and that's
Beautifully put.
And that seems like what this movie is. It's a visual feast for the eyes. Like there will not be a novelization of Megalopolis. It would not work. It would not do it justice. So I look forward to seeing it again. I might talk my friend into seeing it tomorrow. Hell, I hope that it gets a home media release or a proper one. I'm not sure because of the way the financing worked. If it does get a 4K, I would love to have this in 4K. I liked it. I had a good time.
Yeah, I thought I agree with you on all of those points. Having the city feel sparsely populated, I never got that impression. I just always got the idea because whenever there's supposed to be this unrest, you get to see people who are on the other side of fences, and everybody's like sort of holding onto the fences. And I always thought that it was sort of a poignant commentary on the class structure. You do have the major players who are in charge of running the city and planning the development of the city going into the future. And there is very little regard for the lower population. And when they are addressed, they're used as a tool by Shia LaBeouf's character, and he sort of drums up like populism and what do you call it, nationalism and whatnot, in terms of trying to play on the pride and the downtrodden. So if you want to know why your life is sucking, it's their fault. We have to go and fight them. And to the point where even Cicero, Giancarlo Esposito's character, his fixer, played by Dustin Hoffman, he's like killed, and he's killed sort of by flashback, which I thought was interesting. Like even the ability to sort of contain what is happening as time progresses. The old guard are dying out, and the new ones are vying for power within an existing structure. And what Caesar, whatever Adam Driver, Caesar, and so he is more interested in developing for the future with sort of shuffling off the bureaucracy and the old ways to bring in the future. And there are a lot of it does get a little pretentious in its quoting. Like you do have the soliloquy from Hamlet, and there is a point where there's a debate going on because Julia, Cicero's daughter and Caesar's soon-to-be wife, they're having a game of chess and debate through quotes. Through it's almost like a Rogers battle off of popular quotes or deep and philosophical quotes.
At one point, even Giancarlo's character, Mayor Cicero, even says he's quoting Marcus Aurelius, and so she uses other Marcus Aurelius quotes against him. So that actually fit the context of the scene, and I didn't think that was being self-indulgent at all. I thought, okay, that actually works for it. Whereas the to be or not to be Hamlet soliloquy with Driver, it's like, yeah, maybe somebody who hasn't read Hamlet, who isn't familiar with it, isn't gonna pick up on it. But if you have, it's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, no, and I thought it was because of the Mad Dane. I thought it was appropriate to sort of quote that in the presentation. I didn't find when he was doing it, I was like, oh, this is going to drag on and be kind of boring, and it is self-indulgent. But I just thought it was impactful for the scene as it was a presentation, and he was trying to be a bit self-aggrandizing. So why not quote the bard?
Yeah, and I was led to believe from what all these people were saying is like so much of the movie is just people standing around on bad green screen quoting Shakespeare. I'm like, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
Like there's the one scene at the dinner table, like I just mentioned, with Mayor Cicero quoting it, and Julia quotes it back to him, and then you have the Hamlet soliloquy that Caesar does at one point. And yeah, there are but the other uses of quoting direct dialogue happens in conversation or scenes, but there is a story and you can follow it. Like I mentioned, the subplots are easy to follow. The story, they even have in the beginning where they tease that the Soviet satellite is falling out of the sky, and that gets brought up repeatedly and has a bearing on the story. So it's like, yeah, all the plot points I thought kind of came back. I didn't feel like they really abandoned anything. The only thing that seemed a little weird is how, admittedly, Caesar's ability to freeze time doesn't seem to do anything. It's like, okay, so you have this weird ability, but it doesn't, like, why exactly does he use it? Like when they're demolishing the building in the beginning and he stops time just for, like, I'm not really clear about that aspect of it.
I always figured it was architectural inspiration. And when he did stop time, and he only does it like what, 3-4 times?
Yeah, and then
And first time to establish it. The second time he's watching the destruction of the building. And I thought the second time with the destruction of the building was to see how it would fall and then to apply the destruction into the creation of Megalopolis. And so I thought it was like an artistic musing because I liked the sort of montages that they go into when he's doing the work. And it does kind of like, I don't really understand what he's doing, but he's supposed to be like this genius who's won a Nobel Prize. Maybe he's just that far beyond me. And I guess some people could take that as condescending or, again, something that is difficult to understand or glob onto. But I just took it as, oh, okay, this is a genius at work. And if I don't understand, it's not my place to.
Now, is he using that ability in the sequence when Julia follows him to the house out in the rundown neighborhood and he sees his wife in the bed and she doesn't see anything? He's just sitting there on the bed and it's like empty, but he's sitting there and she's actually laying there.
I think was just sort of the representation. Like he still had their previous home and it was like a shrine to her. And so, but it was all like blocked off with lasers, which I assumed was literal. And then I was like, oh, she didn't die. And then when you get to see from Julia's perspective that it is an empty bed, but he's sitting there sort of fiddling, looking like he's taking care of something. And I think that was just sort of so that she gets to see that we know that he's still in love with her. Yeah. And it's a realization for her, not just sort of a boring exposition. It's like, I thought you killed your wife. I would never kill my wife. I loved her. And it's like, this is a better way to show us instead of telling us.
Right, because they teased earlier that, oh, the conspiracy or the weird thing isn't just that he maybe murdered her, but that the body's missing. And so when she was laying there at first, I thought, okay, well, that must be her then. He's done something with this megalon that he's invented to preserve her there, almost like like Sleeping Beauty, if you will. But then you find out from what Julia that she can't actually see her, which made me think, well, maybe since they never really specify, maybe she kind of is there because the body, when you find out later what Cicero has to say about it, he doesn't say what he did when he, hid the body or whatever, what he did with it. So that was the only thing that was a little bit narratively kind of trippy at first for me, but the rest of it I thought was pretty straightforward. And yeah, it doesn't look like ancient Rome, and they do things that are kind of in your face, like the whole extended sequence where Shia is dressed like, Caesar or whatever, and with the toga and the gold leaf helmet, or not a helmet, but the little crown, and he writes it off as a joke, saying, "Oh, it's a fraternity prank," and he's very hyper and very eccentric. But it's like, yeah, that's also Coppola trying to keep the audience focused on the fact that this is like the Roman Colosseum. They're doing the chariot races. Here's the idiot running around in the toga. It's that kind of, like you said, it's that type of decadence that we're witnessing and keeping our eyes on the prize, so to speak. And the whole absurdity with the Virgin song by Grace Vanderwall hanging off the moon like a Cirque du Soleil performance while people are donating all this money and thinking that, oh, we're being won over by this great art. It's like, no, they're just going to scam your money and use it for, all the graft that Cicero is probably responsible for, while Caesar's having a, drug-induced trip backstage, which gives you permission to have that sequence as long as it is be very trippy and fun.
Absolutely, yeah. I did, before we get even further in, I wanted to say hello to the chat. Hey to Eugene Bird. Viewer review on Rotten Tomatoes. I didn't walk out halfway through because I thought maybe it'll get better. Didn't. I disagree because I was waiting for that to happen. I was actually waiting for that to happen, but it never came to me. I was pleased the whole time. Herc 130 is here. Hey, Flyboy. Cat Scott, salutations. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Daniel's Hot Topic says, what's Megalopolis? That's what we're trying to figure out. It's a movie by Francis Ford Coppola that we recently saw, and we're fans of it, even though it seems that the majority may not be. They may not be. Although I haven't checked out any of the. Who did I hear? Mark Kermode. I heard a review from, and he was very upset with it.
Yeah.
But then I heard just a YouTube random. I saw a Megalopolis, and it was like masterpiece question mark. By the way, we should start putting more question marks in our thumbnails because they get higher click counts. But uh, and he said that guy, and I forget his name. He was just like, I thought I would love it or hate it, but I'm actually in love with parts of it and hated other parts. Like he had problems with the green screen and the CGI. I didn't. I was never taken out of the film. And I was like, oh, there's some of that CGI that they were talking about. But it never pulled me out for more than a second because it was illustrating a point. Like it worked for me. I never found it jarring. Like, and as the CGI of the monuments and statues sort of crumbling or wilting and whatnot, I thought that those were, you know, as photorealistic as you're going to get with CGI in 2024. It didn't really bother me. Another thing was, so they do bring up the Soviet satellite, and it eventually they think it's going to harmlessly break up in the atmosphere over Labrador, but they say no, it's actually coming to New Rome, and it does. It disintegrates, but it blows up. It's basically like a 9/11 type event, but of no fault of anyone except for space garbage. And some reviewers have said, well, that just goes away. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It's the destruction of many, many blocks of New Rome, which is New York, facilitating the building of Megalopolis. I thought it was fairly straightforward.
Yeah,
And
it breaks the stalemate.
yeah, exactly. It is.
Yeah.
It's a literal act of God kind of thing being forced upon the present by the sins of the past. I thought it made perfect sense.
I also like how they represented that in the movie. It starts where you see all the fiery streaks coming down towards the city, but then you just see on some buildings like people's silhouettes with red color around it, like these dark silhouettes to demonstrate all the violence and everything that's going on. So he doesn't have to. And that's interesting because Coppola put some thought into the fact that despite that he spent 120 million on this movie, since it's his own money, he's thinking of how can I cut corners, but in an artistically interesting way, so it doesn't feel to the audience like I'm trying to cut corners. Well, he does things like that, the way he just demonstrates destruction of the city. Or like when the Julian Caesar going up the elevator, that was the first instance of bad green screen, but I didn't care because you're focused on the conversation between the two characters. It doesn't really matter what's in the background. And so, and that's how that kind of stuff unfolds. And I assume that when they had the flashback with the Dustin Hoffman character dying, that was supposed to be during the the satellite reigning terror event,
Right.
because he's just kind of wandering around. But okay. But they had interesting set pieces, like in the beginning when the mayor's giving a speech, and they're like these catwalks that are suspended from cables, and you're not really sure where they are, but it looks really rickety. And it's like, that's kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And it's almost, again, representing their arrogance and decadence that, we can't be down below with the people. We have to be high up in the sky, even if it's on these crappy little, planks to be away from other people, throughout. And you can see how that plays out. So, yeah, it was good.
Yeah, yeah. Eugene Bird asks, did you enjoy it, or was it an endurance challenge? Do we rent it on DVD later, or do we spend $15 and 3 hours in the theater for its magnificence?
Well, it's 2 hours 18 minutes.
Yeah, so it's not the endurance. It's not interminable.
No, like, I legit enjoyed it. I wasn't bored by it. I didn't. I thought, again, because the visuals are so interesting. Some of it was really funny, and I genuinely didn't know what was going to happen next. It's like, if you want to see something truly unique and not just the same. Admittedly, we love a lot of normal movies, review them all the time. But if you want to see something that's truly unique, that's not going to come around very often, I would spend it and see it. I was going to see it on IMAX, but then I opted not to because my friend didn't match it, and I bought in a lot of the hype where they said, "Oh, this is awful. Don't want to spend the IMAX." I'm like, well, now I'm kind of kicking myself. I didn't see it IMAX because it would have been visually impressive as an IMAX movie, even though But then again, I don't think they shot it with IMAX cameras, so it's not a big deal. But I would see it on a big screen. I liked it. It was not an endurance test for me at all. In fact, a lot of people were saying it felt so slow. It felt like 4 or 5 hours. To me, it didn't. I felt like it was a 2 hour, 18-minute movie. It felt fine for pacing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that once I started becoming aware of the time, it was probably about 5 minutes, 10 minutes before the movie ended. And I was like, okay, we should get some sort of resolution here.
Yeah, the only time I was aware of it is when there's extended segment where we go away from Caesar for quite a bit, because he's more or less the protagonist, but then we eventually get back to him. But that was still fine because you're telling the story of the supporting characters. So I didn't mind.
Also, that was also after he had been, spoilers, shot.
Yes.
That sort of seeing that vacuum without him. Now, one of the things it's by no means perfect.
No.
There were a couple of things, like I don't like it when main characters in movies, or any characters in movies, get shot in the head and then they are back to finish the story. It's like, I'm sorry, Chief, but that, I guess, was sort of explained by the Megalon. Like, it is a magical substance that you tried to save his wife with it, or from what I understood, and he was actually able to recover based on its magical properties. And it is like, it's going to be, the thing is that it is filled with magic that is questionable, but then also that's part of that he can control time. He doesn't know why. He kind of has that Spider-Man No More situation when he's lost his muse, and it isn't until he hooks up with Julia that he can get it back. And that, I thought that was okay. But anyway, no, I didn't like him getting shot in the head and coming back, but I think that's the first time in ages that I have been actually startled by a gun.
Yeah, that was especially because of who. I'm not going to spoil it any further, but that comes about. It was like, oh man, that was really a gut punch. It's like you felt that.
Yeah,
and that was like really, horrible. But that's really the only thing they don't explain in the movie in terms of like, how did he invent this Megalon? We know that it's very expensive because his uncle's a billionaire and is the one paying for this. Because one of the debates that Cicero has is trying to get Caesar's uncle Crassus to donate more money to their charitable causes, or to building more homes and repairing the infrastructure and all that kind of stuff, whereas instead he's pumping his money into Caesar's Megalopolis project. And admittedly, we don't understand exactly how he's building Megalopolis. It's kind of like he has there's a scene where you go up into his loft and you see all this regular household items or hardware items just glued about to make a rough model of what it's going to look like, and he has Julia walk through it, and she's seeing, like, somehow is magically experiencing what it's actually going to be as a finished product, almost as if you put on VR goggles or something and got to walk around and see it, even though she's not wearing any. So yeah, they don't explain how he made the substance, how he's building Megalopolis. That's very much the sci-fi element. Where in a lot of sci-fi movies, you just have to accept certain things and go with it, and that's the big thing that you have to accept in this movie, is that there's this magical substance that's very expensive but can do all this kind of stuff. It's just. But to the point of it being about the fall of New Rome and the decadence and the arrogance and how the class divide, he's not really using this substance now to help people in a lot of their problems. Now he's like, well, we're going to write off, the current kingdom again, like decimating neighborhoods without putting a thought into it, because I'm just thinking about tomorrow and saving the next generation or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Well, but
Caesar's not fully innocent in this. He's still guilty of that.
Yeah. He's still part of the elites. And that's one of the ways that the unrest in New Rome is sort of directed towards all of the elites, and how Shia is stirring them up into a lather to get them to undermine the power so that he can get the power. The other part that I thought I was like, oh, this is where this goes, is because there is at certain screenings a live interaction. There is one of the reporters, there's a press conference, and I didn't have that. I didn't have any live performers asking the screen questions, but I found it very strange that if it's Brady Bunch squares, then he was in the bottom middle square and the rest of the screen is all blacked out. And I thought that was strange as a choice.
Yeah, because it's like, even though he's the only one doing the press conference, I guess, well, at the time they conceived it because there was going to be an actual person there, so they shrunk it down so his eye line would be closer to the person who's actually standing, like the usher, whoever it was at those few theater locations who gets to ask directly. But what they should have done is had a separate version for people who aren't going to have that in their theater. Like, have it be like full size, because they just do a voiceover in our theater with the lights off. They didn't bother turning on the lights like they do for the few screenings that got to have an actual person there asking a question. So you're right, it is kind of weird. It's like in that instance, they could have just sent out 2 different versions of that scene, but they didn't. So that's like another kind of breaking the fourth wall because we're aware of why it looks that weird. But it's like that I think would be a little lazy. I think they could have done another version of that for the sake of. I mean, I get it. He wants you to feel like this is a very unique and innovative thing, even for the people who don't experience it. But you could still make it feel innovative without, doing that late, because it is kind of weird to see him looking off to the side, like he's clearly answering a question of somebody standing over here, and even though the vast majority of theaters, there's nobody standing over there to ask the question.
Right, and the sound design was there for us in the theater, like it was obviously coming from the viewer's left, and he was addressing where the audio had come from, or where the person was supposed to stand. And they do use like faux news reports throughout. And there is a point where it's just on like an old tube television in the middle of the screen. And I was like, why didn't you just do that? Like, why can't you just have that instead of having this awkwardly blacked out portion of the screen and then just having Adam Driver in the bottom middle? It was an odd choice. And I agree with you in terms of being able to have an alternate version, or even, I don't know if you've seen like the 3D effect. It's not really 3D, but it'll do the black bars at the top and bottom of a screen, and then something will, like, if my hand is going up, it would actually go up and over, but it would only be for that one effect. And so it could have been something that would more visually dynamic. But who am I to yell at Francis Ford Coppola? Yeah. Good to see Judge Finity here. Indeed, I agree with Scotty about not loving prequels, so I'm writing a bonus origin flashback now. I'm glad that you're keeping up with the writing, man. But in terms of recommendation, I would say, yeah, I would recommend it because I would assume that if you go into a Francis Ford Coppola movie, you know about Francis Ford Coppola. You've probably seen at least one of the Godfathers. You've probably seen Apocalypse Now. And he's not necessarily married to a 3-act structure. He likes to play around with all these things. He's doing really dynamic things with like sectioning off the screen. And so you are going to get a sense of, oh, he's doing this to show off how to do cinema. And it's like, well, yeah, that's Francis Ford Coppola. And so if you're interested in his works, and you want to see an auteur in his twilight years bringing something to life that he was very, very passionate about, I think it swings. I think it swings real hard. And I don't think it's a complete miss. I wouldn't say it's a home run, but you're probably getting to third.
Yeah, it's very. I like seeing things that are, risks that are very different. Again, I actually enjoyed it for a lot of its wackiness, made it enjoyable, rather than, because then there's a lot of, nodding back to like old Hollywood in terms of the way the characters, especially with the way they portray New Rome, and it's like they're evoking those old, frankly boring Roman epics and everything, the types that the Coen brothers made fun of in Hail Caesar, but they're doing it and telling the same type of story that you would get in those boring Roman epics from old Hollywood in an entertaining way by doing it just completely, balls to the wall, just totally kind of nuts about it. I mean, I would watch this again before I would watch, say, God, what is it? Cleopatra was 4 hours long. Yeah. It's like, and again, that those types of movies, with the cinematography and the camera's always locked in place, very boring mass shot. It's like, yeah, I would watch this again because it's telling you a similar story, but it's so wacky and so much more fun to watch.
Absolutely. Cinematic Universe Ultimate. Good to see you. I don't know if I've seen you before. See you. Yes. I mean, if someone had yelled at Coppola, would have made for a better movie. Well, and hey, what were your thoughts on it, Cinematic Universe Ultimate?
That's Ernesto.
Oh, is it?
He gave it 1 star.
Oh, he gave it 1 star?
1 out of 5.
When did you last watch a baseball game? A strike at first base at best. Okay. Now, okay, so there you go. That's how you feel. And that's fair enough. Like, again, this is one of those movies where I'm not gonna say that people are wrong for not liking it, but no. I went in with the anticipation of it being basically on par with Southland Tales, because Southland Tales has Liquid Karma, as their magical substance that is trying to help move the world forward, but this is the way that the world ends. And I would say it's better than Southland Tales.
Yeah, I saw Southland Tales once. It was a bit of a marathon to get through it. My favorite part was Wallace Shawn. He was great.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the sequence with the hand where he's like, I'm going to get, however that scene goes. But the rest of that movie was a real marathon, hard for me to get through. I'm like, this is too, I can't with this. Megalopolis I thought was much more entertaining than Southland Tales. But you're right. It's very much that same type of abstract kind of idea and similar ideas as to what's going on.
Yeah. And so with those being my expectations going in, it hit them and exceeded them. I am looking forward to checking out again if it does get a physical release. I know you're big on the 4K. I'm okay with a Blu-ray. But yeah, I'm looking forward to revisiting it again. I don't know if Coppola does audio commentaries, but it'd be interesting to hear what he has to say. But then again,
yeah, I'm not sure. And admittedly, I have not seen much of his filmography past Apocalypse Now. I mean, I remember seeing Jack, which I liked, save for the weird forced romance thing, which is really creepy.
Yes.
But other than that, I thought that was a good movie. But a lot of people hate that one too. I've seen bits and pieces of Peggy Sue Got Married. Haven't seen the whole thing. Didn't see The Outsiders, and I've heard about Tetro and Twixt. I haven't seen those, so I really haven't. I admit I'm not much of an authority on Coppola past 79,
Sure.
but only that he definitely always will do what he wants to do. He doesn't care about being famous or being popular or other people like it. He is going to make what he wants and is an auteur in that way. And so I respect it. Swing for the fences, and he paid for it with his own money. Even when Lionsgate didn't want to market it, I'll pay you to market it. And so, which is like crazy. But yes, it's true. You never put your own money into your own film. But if you're Coppola and you sold your winery for $1 billion, then I guess it doesn't matter. Even after taxes and all that type of stuff, because he still has another winery, so it's fine. And $1 billion now or close to it.
Yeah. Ernesto says, to be clear, I didn't hate this movie. I saw what he was going for. I got the point. The execution just wasn't there. This wasn't the one. I'm all for passion projects, but this one didn't work for me. Fair enough. And dude, I know you know your movies, and this doesn't necessarily apply to you. And again, I'm not trying to generalize with anyone. I think that the average moviegoer wouldn't be satisfied with this movie just because it doesn't adhere to traditional storytelling styles. And it is it does present a lot of its ideas as abstracts. But I was fine with that. Like, I remember, and not to look at me, but like, I remember going to see Mulholland Drive the first time in a car full of people, and they were like, what the fuck was that? And then I was like, no, this, then this, then this, and then this, and this. And it works. It's fine. Well, I love it.
The same thing happened a decade ago with Inherent Vice. So many people couldn't understand the movie. It's like, well, he takes 5 cases that are all related to each other. It's very easy to follow, but he's also a hippie stoner. So it's also like you're supposed to be feeling kind of whacked out while it's like a movie that's openly encouraging you to get high before you go and watch it. But even if you're not, it still plays really straightforward. But because it doesn't follow the very slavish, hard-boiled detective noir type structure, which it's aiming for in its aesthetic, then people get confused by it. Like, why are you doing this? It's not the way it's supposed to be done. That kind of thing. And so I could see why a lot of the YouTube reviewers and stuff that I watch for a lot of more general main release Hollywood movies and watch something like this, and their reaction was like, I don't understand it. What the hell's going on? This is crazy. This is awful. It's like, yeah, but I didn't. But then again, as you and I have been talking for the half hour, we didn't really have a hard time understanding the movie. So yeah, the execution is definitely going to be what people should be going back and forth on. I'm surprised just by how many people are confused by it, because again, the execution is either going to work for you like it did for us, or it's not going to work for you like Ernesto and a lot of other people. But I'm very genuinely surprised that people say they can't follow the story or understand it, because it does seem pretty straightforward, even with its subplots to me.
Yes. And even with some of the presentation, like over intellectualizing it, I think is a disservice to it, because everyone knows the meet cute, and then they fall in love, and then they are just madly in love for the rest of the film, and everything is wine and roses. With this, they meet because she is enamored with his ability to stop time. She gets a job as an assistant, And there is obviously he's pulling away from her because he's still in love with his wife. But when it does finally kick off and they do hook up, if you will, the montage and the filmmaking of it, the language of the film really provides that emotional, they're falling in love, you get to watch it and you partially get to experience too. I thought it was actually really touching at points. I didn't expect to be like emotional with the movie because again, I was sort of going in to be like, okay, I'm gonna get as much fodder as possible and then I'm gonna make fun of it. And I was absolutely surprised that it was better than I thought it was going to be and more emotional than I thought it was going to be.
Eugene Bird said it's 47.34 on RT, but my daughter tells me the Emoji Movie only got 10, but she thought it was a 90.
There you go.
There you go.
Art is subjective.
Here's a very good question Eugene poses. I wonder what 2001: A Space Odyssey would have gotten on RT at its opening. Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you bring up Inherent Vice too, because my complaint with Inherent Vice was that I thought it was going to be something along the lines of The Big Lebowski. And it wasn't like stoner movie, but that's about as far as it goes. And even when The Big Lebowski first came out, not a hit. And it has grown into being one of the biggest cult classics of all time.
Yeah, Cinematic Universe is, yes, Inherent Vice, boring. That's in my top 10 favorite movies ever. I love that movie. I can watch that on repeat. It is so much fun. And I love this, because again, that's another bizarre movie where you're taking, again, the hard-boiled 40s detective noir, but you're putting it in 70s Southern California beach town hippiedom. It's so bizarre, but it works for me. I love it. But yeah, let's see, what else is there? Yeah, Chief Judge Finity says I was expecting more Crockett and Tubbs. But yeah, that is still a good. He says,
Is the woman cute, Julia? Yeah, it's Natalie Emmanuel.
Yes,
and she was quite attractive, quite striking. Aubrey Plaza was great. Even Talia Shire. Like the limited relationship, she plays Caesar's mother, Adam Driver's mother. And even I thought that she was engaging. She starts off as being like there's a gap between son and mother. And then as the movie progresses, because it takes place over, I would say, several years, becomes sort of subject to dementia, but she's aware that she has dementia and she plays it very confidently. I thought Talia Shire was super fabu in this.
Yeah, she was.
And I think everybody who fulfilled their role, the worst that you could say is that they were playing more of an archetype than they were playing a character. Right. But even then, they had character moments that set them apart from just being an archetype. It wasn't a cliche, in my opinion. So,
yeah, I was invested in the story between Julia and Caesar, and with his rivalry with Cicero. I was invested in that story, and then all the crazy stuff happening on the side with Wow Platinum and Claudia, and wondering where that was going to go. Let's see.
He says, for reals, doesn't the title refer to all life having the seeds of its own end built in at the start, or something? I think I don't think so, because it's based on it's based on that conspiracy that you referred to, but the title Megalopolis, they get megalon, which is the element, and then with metropolis, so it's a megalopolis. And I honestly, the thing that I think of most after having seen it is that megalopolis is a word that just sort of feels like it's going to break under its own weight.
Well, it's a word that also in real life means, like, if you have a bunch of different cities that are like clustered around the same area where it's all connected, even though they're technically different cities, it's like a megalopolis. Like Los Angeles, a lot of time when people say Los Angeles, they're referring to the entire LA area, like, Hollywood, Beverly Hills, Burbank, Chatsworth, Irvine, Manhattan Beach, Venice Beach, the whole that entire Southern California megaplex, where if you zoom in on Google Earth, it just looks like a massive sprawl of one massive city, even though it's not. So that's technically that is like a real life megalopolis, kind of like London.
Yeah.
There are so many different cities and boroughs divided all around, London, that the whole thing is like a megalopolis called London, but it's comprised of several different cities.
Yes. But apparently I was incorrect. Finity was referring to inherent vice as being all life having the seeds of its own end built in it at the start.
Yes, that's true. The maritime law that you can't insure something which is inherently, which is going to fail, like ice will melt and that kind of thing.
Sure. The debauchery is presented without being gratuitous, which I thought was great.
Megalopolis sounds like an amazing huge beef burger to me. It does, doesn't it? It kind of does. But yes, I agree that that the debauchery is portrayed in that type of way, and it was also entertaining to watch. Like just the insanity of it. Like you see the whole show with all the clowns or the mimes or whatever. You get to watch that whole Cirque du Soleil thing, and it's just the one family sitting at that table that looks like this grand feast that's been laid out for them. And of course, that's when Claudio decides to pull his stupid stunt, which was admittedly kind of funny.
Oh, it was. Like, it's so interesting that there are things, if he's been working on this for like 40 years, there are things that are even prevalent now. Like there is a Taylor Swift-esque vestigial virgin, and they deep fake her with Caesar, thusly breaking the balloon on her sort of virginal performances. She has a Megalon made dress, which adds translucency or transparency. And she finishes her song and it's like, you can see right through me. And I thought that was on the nose, but pretty fun. And then people were like, and I remember that it's like, she has her downfall and it's never referred to again, but it's not true because they immediately show that she just switched her entire celebrity persona. She went from cute girl next door virgin to basically punk rock Joan Jett. I'll fuck anything that moves.
Yeah, and on that really deliberately like bad like fire, CG fire in the background where she's like, I'm rising up from hell, being like that. And it's like, okay, well, and plus that was the only thing her character existed for either, was that little attempt by Claudio to undercut Caesar. So there's no reason for her to come back again anyway, even if they did refer to it again.
Right. Exactly.
So, yes, I don't understand that complaint.
Yeah, I don't either. And that's the thing, is that maybe it's the picking up of plot threads and then the immediate resolution that could be an issue.
Ernesto says, I do give credit to the homage to Ben-Hur and not Madison Square Garden. Yeah, that was actually a pretty cool sequence and well shot. I thought that was kind of cool. Oh, Taylor Swift, more like Miley Cyrus. Yeah, I guess so. In terms of, especially when you listen to the that's true.
But I would say if you're into more avant-garde cinema and you're willing to leave the door open to it, I think you can have a good time.
I enjoyed this so much more than what standard stuff we had to watch for at my actual avant-garde cinema class in college. A lot of that stuff was like watching paint dry, and this was so much like literally we had to watch a video. It's a 30-minute video of a tree in the fog, in the morning fog, and the fog is slowly dissipating to reveal how large the tree is. But it's just, that's all it is. It's just watching for 35 minutes or whatever, and some of it is just like, no, I can't do with avant-garde. This was so much more entertaining than that.
Definitely. It obviously it does have a narrative. It does have a through line. I never got confused by it. I was never bored by it. It was attractive people doing amazing things and people that I hadn't seen in a while. Surprised that Dustin Hoffman wasn't in it more. Was surprised Jason Schwartzman wasn't in it more. But even just their presence was sort of, it did add to the flavor of the film as a whole. And
you had Catherine Hunter in there as Cicero's wife.
Yes.
She was just in the front room as the lead, or the co-lead in that. So that was need to see her in this. And made for an interesting coupling between her and Giancarlo Esposito. Because I thought at first when she showed up that she was supposed to be his mother or something, but then I saw that they were actually married because there's a very clear, significant age gap between them. But
yes,
I thought, oh, okay,
well, and that's also something that I liked is they had like Cicero and his wife had a loving relationship. It wasn't one of those things where the bad guy's an asshole to his wife. Like Cicero's actually a very caring individual despite his Machiavellian nature.
Yeah.
And I thought that like it was nuanced. I enjoyed how Aubrey Plaza and Shia LaBeouf got their comeuppance. I enjoyed how and who delivers the comeuppance because it was something that I wasn't expecting.
That was really
I thought it was great because the one you wanted dead died, and the one you wanted to be humiliated is, and it just works out really well. I thought it was satisfying for me, and I would say that if you are into the visual storytelling, the bombast of cinema, if you will. This is worth the $15, and for me, it didn't feel like 2 hours and 20.
Yeah, you're stopping them. How dare you stopping the mayor's parade for Caesar for him?
Yeah,
that's great.
It is hilarious. Those little touches of how they just sort of needle at each other, and when they have to come face to face to negotiate for the future, and then there are offers that are made that are flat out rejected. Like that, I thought that was something that was kind of a neat choice. Is when Caesar comes when Cicero comes to Caesar, and comes clean about Caesar's dead wife, and it's like, okay, but you can't. It'll be better for my family if you just stay away from my daughter, and I'll give you 3 days. And he's like, okay. And never addressed again. And it's like, I guess he chose not to. It doesn't have to be told to you that he's like, I reject your offer. It's just he didn't take it.
Yeah, and and then sometimes it's a little too on the nose, like when Claudio is trying to rile up the crowd, so he climbs on top of the tree stump that's cut to look like a swastika.
That was.
It's like,
yeah, there were 2 instances. Like it's so funny in a day where everybody throws around the word Nazi. No one wants to use the word Nazi on a live stream, or else, sort of Damocles will get you. There are a couple of very, very overt Nazi references in this film.
And then there was a surprisingly Confederacy reference when Caesar's supporters stormed the not Madison Square Garden to stick up for Caesar, and one of them, for some reason, is waving a Confederate bat flag banner. So what the hell's that about?
But I thought that was sort of a maybe not so subtle commentary. Like it's fun being on the internet this time of year on an election year. Everyone's going insane. And so yeah. I thought that was with the political, again, machinations that are going on and who's trying to levy power. I thought that was a not so subtle reference to the modern state of the states, modern state of America.
Ernesto said the kid's autograph is the most realistic part of the movie. That single sequence was well executed, even when you know what's going to happen. Yes, and we're not going to allude to it anymore because it was a great scene, and it was very well done. I agree 100%. Yeah.
And again, it is the first time that, or not the first time, but it has been a long time since not only was tension built and executed at the same time, but it was absolutely startling and visceral. I thought it was great, and it changed. I was like, I have no idea where we're going now. So
yeah,
like I've seen movies that, like, I like a Bill Murray movie called The Razor's Edge, and it is basically a Great Gatsby-esque story. And when you watch that, you kind of know exactly where it's going to go. It does begin and go and follow, and there aren't really that many surprises. With this, it took some turns, and I liked it. I liked the way that it handled its source material, or not its source material. I'm glad how it handled itself.
So Ernesto tries to answer Eugene Bird's question about 2001's reception. He says it would have been as well received as, say, Interstellar. just with a slight more pop for a wider audience. Who knows? Most movies are better digested in the when, not the where. That's true. In terms of when they're better digested.
Yeah, well, and I do think that this is a movie that's going to be sort of looked upon either as a success or as a failure, but it's not going to be forgotten, I don't think. Especially when you're dealing with Coppola.
Yeah.
Eugene Bird says Jason Schwartzman, Ramona Flowers' boyfriend. Well, for a time until Scott shows up. It's Scott Pilgrim versus the World is rad. Ernesto says the kids. Oh, we did say that. And the only insanity are the still undecided voters. Well, I don't have to vote in
there's
an
tons
American
of
election.
insanity on all sides, Ernesto. There's so much insanity right now. It's so bad. Oh God.
Yes. That's why I went to go see Megalopolis.
Sticker
Doom
says,
scroll all day.
Why don't we just throw a five flag that says we're fucked 2024? There we go. It doesn't matter who wins at this point. We're fucked 2024.
Yes. Vote for the asteroid.
Yes.
That's my advice, because that's what we're looking for over here in Canada. But yeah, so I would say check it out in the theater. I would say go in with an open mind. It's not as bad as you've heard. And also, if you're listening to this review, don't think it's as good as we're saying. It just hit us properly. I hate it when people say, oh, this movie was made for me. I don't think that's true. I think this movie was made for an audience with an open mind and a bit of reverence without taking it itself too seriously, but it doesn't wink at the audience. It's not it isn't self-parody. It's not so bad it's good. And I think it's better than bad. It's better than bad. It's good. That's my review.
Infinity says Apocalypse Now continues to improve with each viewing for me. Yeah, and there's a lot of movies like that. There's a movie you go back and you always discover something more. Infinity also says full-length redux of the 3 versions for me. I prefer the final cut. That's my favorite version.
Full-length redux, I think is the last one I saw. I haven't seen the final cut.
It's pretty good. It just they get rid of the whole thing with the Playboy helicopter when they hang out the next day, and they shorten some of the stuff at they still have the French plantation scene, but it's not as long. So it streamlines the movie a bit more. And
okay,
that's my favorite version.
I'm okay with the redo.
So how many?
I was just gonna say, off topic from Ernesto, but I hope Kevin Costner finishes his Western epic.
I would watch this a few more times before I watched part 1 of that again.
Wow. Yeah.
That was like, I that just didn't grab, and I think it's also a pacing issue because it's like to sit down for 3 hours to watch 25% of multiple storylines. It doesn't pay off in, say, the same way that different storylines you're watching, say, the Penguin show pay off after just. And by payoff, I don't mean to finish the storyline, but to get some enjoyment out of the first initial bit you're watching. But yeah, I can hope that Kevin Costner gets to finish it because that's also a passion project where he's putting in a lot of his own money, which is admirable. I had thought he had already been filming part 3, but apparently that's not true. So I think he'll be able to film part 3. I think he's got maybe the money, assuming whoever he got money from didn't pull out. So we'll see. I know he was happy that they delayed the release of part 2 because he thinks that'll help build the first one's momentum, even though it's not going to get the financial. It's not going to make its money back, but we'll see where that goes. See, this is this universe says this is why Kat and I get along. Whereas Finity says Playboy models in the jungle elevates the movie to a whole new surreal level. Again, for me, yes, and it does something different for everybody. They still have the sequence in the final cut where they go to the concert and all the Playboy girls are there. That's still there. They just don't have the thing where the main characters are hanging out in their helicopter the next morning. Yes. Daniel's Hot Topic says, the first day of the spooky season is upon us and it was great. That's good. Speaking of all that, so what do we get this as a rating out of 10? How many stars do you give Megalopolis?
Megalopolis. I'm going to give this, I'm going to give it an 8. I really enjoyed it to the point that after I was leaving the theater, and this never happens. I'm terrified by being left alone with my own thoughts. But I drove the 40 minutes back from the theater because I had to go a ways. Silence, no radio, just thinking about the movie and whether or not it was like what had touched me. Because there was a moment where I had actually, my heart swelled and I was really, really taken by it. And I would have, yeah, it affected me in a very positive way. And maybe it's because I heard it was underwhelming and it over delivered for me. But yeah, I would give it, yeah, between a 7 and an 8, closer to an 8 than a 7.
I also give it an 8 because again, it was abstract, it was weird, it was enjoyable, but I also didn't get lost in the story at all. I could follow what was going on, save for those couple things I mentioned earlier, but I got around it. So I really enjoyed myself. I like it when a filmmaker every once in a while swings for the fences. Sometimes it works and other times it doesn't, but I thought it worked for me this time. So
yeah, well, and it was. I still have a hate boner for Deadpool 3 just because of formula and references, and just it made me smile the whole time, but it was just bothering. And I liked this because I was going in not knowing what I was going to get, hoping that it was going to entertain, looking for a story that I had never heard before, and I thought that it fulfilled a lot of the things that I like about movies in the first place.
Ernest says, show me on the diagram where, Scott.
It touched my heart. It was my heart.
Eugene Burr says, thank you for going to this movie and giving us insight. I didn't get anything about what it was about from the previews. That's true. Even though the official premise is saying that, the mayor's daughter is torn between the mayor's vision for the future or Caesar's view. Is that really what the whole movie's about? It's probably not really at all what it's about, but they had to put something down for the premise line.
Yes. And Finity asks, did Aubrey Plaza look hot in it? Yes. Yes, she did. She was very attractive. And she did some pretty good dirty talk at one point. Oh, yeah. And then with the sound design, when she's going through her schemes, and every time she holds up a finger, there would be the sound of scissors. I thought that was just an interesting choice. Like, the movie is aware of itself, so it's not really taking itself too seriously. But it also, again, it doesn't border on parody. I thought she was really, really good. The only thing that took me out about Aubrey Plaza in it is there's a point where she is getting Crassus. Is that his name? Crassus?
Yeah.
Getting Crassus his brand new monument, and the veil for it won't come off properly, and she's like, what the fuck, Jerry? And I just couldn't help but laugh because she's always yelling at Jerry in Parks and Recreation, and I was just like, was that a Parks and Rec reference? I don't know, but I thought it was pretty funny.
That'd be funny. That's what it was.
Eugene Bird says, Aubrey Plaza has scared me stiff with some of her roles, if you know what I mean. Yes. Petrified, if you will. Actually, there's a couple of good dick jokes in this movie too. But yeah. Was it Daniel's Hot Topics with the first day of the spooky season? Daniel, we're going to be continuing our spooky season this Thursday, and I think we're doing Frankenstein.
Yes, we could do that, or we could do Phantom of the Opera, since I now have a copy of that.
Oh, you did?
I could watch both of them because I'm pretty sure the first one is on YouTube for free, public domain.
Yes. Okay.
So I could watch both, and we could just talk about both. You don't have to watch both if you don't want to, but we could do that too, either or.
I will. You know what? We'll let you know on Thursday. We'll decide off screen, and then you'll know on Thursday. But we're going to be continuing at the Universal Monsters on Thursday. On Thursday as well, on Cinema Gulp, he's releasing his It Was a Bloody Good Year for 1984, where we're going to be talking about The Terminator, Ghostbusters, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. And so that's Friday. A cinema.
Yeah, on Cinema Gulp. Yeah.
Yeah.
And on Friday, we will be returning with Capes, Cows, and Crusaders to talk about the first 2 episodes of The Penguin. And we haven't decided on what proper day of the week we're going to do it for the rest of it. We might be sporadic with that for availability, but I'm thinking maybe Mondays. So look for that episode to be live streamed this Friday at 7:30 Pacific with Ernesto and I, and maybe Steve if he shows up. If he's able to. He's been in the process of a move right now, so we're not sure. So look out for that as well. And other news, last bit, Francis Ford Coppola has said in a recent interview that he's already in early development on his next movie.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought this was going to be a swan song, but if he's doing another one, that's great.
Yeah, he said he's already in development for whatever it is, and I'm sure if the studios don't want to give him anything for it, he wouldn't have a problem financing it because again, he still owns his big primary Inglenook winery, and then he just sold the one that was further up north for like $1 billion. So if he's passionate about it, he wants to do it, he could do it. So,
well, yeah, and the Coppolas, it's a fairly profitable family from what I understand.
Mm.
But yeah, just wanted to stop in and talk about Megalopolis because it's fun when Kat and I can agree, and so I know that we wanted to talk about the philosophies of this movie. And Antiderivative Jill is here.
Hello.
Hey, I want to see this movie. I recommend it to you specifically. I think that you would appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
But did you have anything that you wanted to add, Kat?
No, it's just that it is a visual feast for the eyes experience. It's an experience. It's worth it. I think I've seen much worse movies where I'm just bored out of my mind watching it. And it doesn't seem like there's anything interesting going on. This is swinging for the fences, but at least does so in a visually audacious type of way, and just with things that are really funny, even the things that weren't necessarily intended to be funny. And so it's not a so bad it's good. I guess I don't think it's necessarily a bad movie, even if the themes are a bit general and on the nose, kind of broad. But I still really like it, and I think everybody could check it out. And based on the reviews I've been reading and watching, it seems to be the same thing. Everybody complaining that it doesn't have a proper narrative structure, but well, not everybody does. So
yeah,
and I think this one's better for it. But watch this Roman epic over old Hollywood Roman epics. I tell you that.
Yeah, and it almost had like a cyberpunky vibe to it as well. So I was with it for the sci-fi. I was with it for the Rome, and yeah, I agree. So before we go, I just wanted to thank everybody who's here. Thank you so much, Eugene Bird, for being here. Obviously, Cinematic Universe Ultimate. I'm sorry for not recognizing you. It's always a name change. Herc 130, good to see you, sir. And thank you for being here, Daniel's Hot Topics. Chief Judge Affinity, thank you. Keep that pen to paper, sir. Jill, obviously, a pleasure to see you. And speaking of Jill, on Friday, we will be over on her channel talking about Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, if I'm not mistaken.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
I don't know.
I got the entire Harry Potter steelbook set up there.
You got the steelbook? Sweet.
Right in that. Oh wait a minute. That box right there, that big black box.
Super fab. Well, I'm sure if you wanted to come around and talk Harry Potter on Friday, we could ask Jill. I'm sure she'd be amicable.
Oh, so she says, "Whoa!" So she just saw my. Yeah, I can show those off sometime.
Sweet, outstanding. All right. So that has been and continues to be Megalopolis. Megalopolis.
Yeah, I've said that a couple times too tonight.
But I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Hope you guys get a chance to check out the film if it is your jam. And we will see you next time. See you, Kat.
See you, Scott.